Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Now this video is important for anyone who is aspiring to become a front-end or a full-stack developer because in this video we are going to discuss a simple trick which is going to help you in plan and code your website better. Right, so make sure that you pay attention and watch this video till the very end. Now this video is also a part of the front-end course that I'm creating. The playlist is in front of you. The link to the playlist would be in the description below. So if you haven't checked out the videos before this, then do make sure to check them out. And without any further ado, let's get started. Let's talk about grid layout in CSS. So it offers a grid-based layout system with the help of rows and columns, making it easier to design web pages, right? So with them, you can divide your page into major regions that are out there in your web page, right? And rather than going into theory, let's just see how it actually works. So what I'm going to do is I have this plain index.html file with nothing in it. So I'm going to create the HTML boilerplate in it, and I'm going to remove the meta tags here because this is something that we don't need. And I'm going to change the title of this document to CSS Grids because that's what we are discussing. Right, and here you can see that I have my CSS grids file open already in the browser. What we are going to do is we are going to create a simple div tag. And if you remember from the previous video, div tag is a simple block level element that is used as a container for HTML elements, right? So I create this div tag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this div tag an ID called grid. Right. So I give it an ID. ID is a unique identifier for this div tag that is here. Right. And I'm giving this an ID of grid. Right. And inside this, I'm going to create 9 divs. Right. With the class of box. So box, the class box is basically to categorize these divs with the class box so that I can apply the same styles to all the divs that are there, right? And I'm simply going to add the content box one into it, right? So I'm going to create about 9 boxes here, right? And let's just quickly change the numbers in these boxes. Right, so I have my 9 boxes with the class box, right? These div tags with the class box. I have these 9 boxes and they are inside a div with the ID of grid, right? Now, if I save this and take a look at how it looks in the browser, I can see that I have these div tags and the box one up until box 9 in the browser. So I want them to, you know, differentiate a little bit because I cannot identify which box is what, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a style tag inside my head tag here. Again, this is something that we covered in the previous video. There are 3 ways to add styles. So I'm using this way to add my styles, and I'm going to add the CSS to the class box, right? So I'm using dot and then box to add the CSS to the class box so that it applies to all the divs that are here, all of these divs, right? And inside this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a padding, right? A padding of, let's say, 10 pixel, I think should be more than enough. I'm going to give it a border. So I'm going to give it a border of 1 pixel. I'm going to keep the border solid and I'm going to keep it black. Right. All of this is something that we covered in the previous video, all these styles, these basic styles and stuff. Right. So now I can see that I can see my boxes differently. And one more thing that we can do is we can give a background color to these. And I'm going to choose the background color of gray. Right. So now I have my boxes in front of me, right? The 9 boxes, the 9 div tags that I created, with a little bit of styling, with some background color and padding and borders, right? Now, grids are used to create 2D layout of your website, right? So you can basically create rows and columns, right? Rows are basically, so currently these boxes are lined up as rows, but I can have multiple boxes in a single row as well, right? Which would make them columns, right? Something similar to a table, right? So to do that in CSS with grids, what I can do is I can use my ID called hashtag grid. Right. And inside this grid, I can simply do a display. Display is another CSS property which is used to set display type of the element that is there, and it has again a lot of values that you can give to it. CSS values, block and none, and grid is one of them. So what we want to do is we want to give it a property value of grid, right? So we want to display it as grid. Now if I save this and if I refresh this, and don't worry about all the different properties that you were seeing, we are going to have a different video on CSS dedicated to CSS. So we are going to cover a lot of CSS in that, but for the time being, just know that display is a property in order to set how you want to display the element, and I want to display it as grid. Now, if I save this and if I refresh this, then you will see that nothing has changed, right? So you'll ask me that, Apoorv, nothing has changed, so what does this grid actually do, right? So grid has some other properties as well. Uh, the first property is to set columns, right? So I want to, rather than displaying nine different boxes and nine different rows, what I want to do is I want three boxes in each row, right? So box 1, box 2, box 3, and then box 4, box 5, box 6, and then box 7, box 8, and then box 9, something like that, right? So what I can do is I can simply do a grid and then template columns, right? So this is again a CSS property, grid template columns, right? And inside this, what I can do is I can say that I want three boxes. I want first box to have a width of 25%. I want the second box to have a width of 50%, and I want the third box to have a width of again 25%. Right. If I save this now and if I refresh this, I can see that my boxes are now aligned in the form of rows and columns, right? So I mean, I haven't said anything about the rows here yet, but what I did is I told it about the columns. I said that the grid template for columns, I want it to be in a way that the first column takes about 25% of the width, the second column takes about 50% of the width, and the third column takes about 25% of the width, right? So here I can see that I now have my nine boxes aligned in the form of columns, three columns in three rows because I had nine boxes. If let's say I remove two boxes from here at the end, then again I'm going to have three rows, but the remaining two boxes would be missing out of it, right? So let's just add them back for the time being and refresh this, and I can see that I have my boxes now. So you will also notice that the percentages I have used, the sum of these percentages is equal to 100, right? So I can also exceed it from 100. I can say I want the width to be 50%, 50%, and 50%, right? So this is going to again give me box 1, box 2, and then box 3 is out of the screen because I have to scroll sideways to see my box 3, and then same for box 6 and box 9, right? So I can set it in percentages as well, but one unit that you should use while working with grids is called fraction, right? So fraction, I mean, there can be as many fractions as there are, right? So I can say I want one FR and then one FR and then one FR. FR stands for fraction, right? So just like PX for was pixel, percentage, the symbol for percentage is for percentages, FR is for a fraction, right? So I can say 1FR and 1FR and 1FR, and then I can say 1FR and then 1FR. So this gives me five fractions. I want five fractions in my row, right? So here I will see that I have five boxes and then the remaining four boxes in the next row, right? Now I can again change these values. I can say that I want this to be 9FR, right? Which is going to look a bit weird. So I can say that box 5 now is taking 9 fractions, right? Or instead of this one, I can say that I want my first one to be 9FR, right? So I can see now that my box 1 and box 6 are taking about 9 fractions and the rest of the boxes are taking one fraction each. So fractions is something that is never going to, you know, put your stuff out of the screen, that you have to scroll horizontally to, look at your stuff, because that is something that can happen with percentages but never with fractions, right? So that's why it is recommended that you use fractions instead of uh, regular percentages or pixels per se, right? And again, I mean, I changed this to 1FR for three times, and I have three columns with taking a width of one fraction each, right? So I have three fractions. So box one is taking one third, box two is taking one third, and box three is taking one third, right? Now this similar stuff that I've done, I can do it for my rows as well, right? I can have, let's say, just two columns of one fractions each. So this time I have about two columns. This box one and box two, these are my two columns, right? And I have about five rows, box one, box three, box five, box seven, and box nine. These are my five different rows that are there. I can do the same thing for rows as well. I can use a grid template rows, and I can say that I want one fraction for my first row and three fractions for my second row. If I refresh this now, then I can see that my second row is a bit elongated, right? It is a bit longer than my rest of the rows, right? Now, one thing that you'll notice is that it applied it to the second row, but what if I want this to be for every even row that is there, right? I want this three fractions to be there for every even row that is there, right? So what I can do is, again, I mean, there is a thing called repeat, right? So I can say that I want to repeat a pattern for my grid template rows, right? I want to repeat a pattern here, and I can say that I want to repeat it about 10 times because I have about five rows. So I mean, any number that is greater than 5 would still work the same, right? I want to repeat it 10 times, and I want one fraction for my odd rows, and I want about three fractions for my even rows, right? If I save this now and if I refresh this, um, I think I shouldn't add the commas here. Yeah. So if I refresh this here, I can see that my first row is again having just one fraction. So I'm repeating this about 10 times, right? So the basic syntax for your repeat is that you enter the repeat and then you go into the parentheses, and inside the parentheses you first enter the number of times that you want it to repeat, then a comma, and then you enter the values that you want for your pattern, right? So I'm saying that I want my odd rows, right, to be one fraction. So my first row, my third row, and my fifth row is just one fraction. And I want my even rows to be three fractions, right? So my second row and my fourth row is three fractions each, right? I can again add one more value here. I can say that I want 5 FR for my every third row that is there, right? And if I refresh this now, I can see that now the pattern has changed. I am having one fraction for my every first row that is there, then my every second row is having a three fraction, and in my every third row is then having a fifth fraction that is there, right? So one fraction, and then three fraction, and then five fractions, and then again one fraction, and then again three fractions, right? So that is your basic, how you can space your templates, how you can space your grid in the form of columns and rows, right? Now sometimes you need some gap between your rows and columns. I mean, these boxes that I've created right now, they are a bit cluttered, right? They are conjoined, and they're very sticking to each other and stuff like that. So what I can do is I can simply use a property called grid column gap, right? So I mean, I think it's deprecated or something, but I can simply use this property grid column gap, and I can say that I want the columns to have a gap of 10 pixels each between them, right? If I refresh this, I can see that my columns have separated apart from each other, right? If I, let's say, remove this property and refresh this, I can see that they have again joined with each other, right? So I have this column for I have this space, this gap for my columns. I can similarly have a gap for my rows as well, right? I can use my grid column, and then not column, grid row gap, right? So the gap between the rows, and I can again have it at 10, as 10 pixels, right? If I refresh this now, I can see that my all the rows now are having a space between them, right? But I mean, having these two different things for columns and rows just to add a gap, sometimes you want to add the gap for both the rows as well as the columns, right? So doing this again and again doesn't make sense. Writing these two properties for the gap doesn't make sense, right? So I can have a simple property called gap which will apply the gap to both the rows as well as column. If I save this now, I can see that nothing changes in it. I can increase the value as well. I can say that I want about 25 pixels as gap between my rows as well as columns, right? If I refresh this, I can see that the gap has increased, right? Now similarly, if let's say I remove this and I refresh this, now I have again my boxes with equal height for all the boxes that are there because I removed my grid template rows out of it. Now, sometimes the rows that you're creating, right? The rows that I'm creating, I want them to have a height, a default height that is there, right? I don't want my boxes to look so thin that are there. I want them to have a set amount of height whenever I'm creating these, you know, rows that are there inside a grid. So for that, I can have a property called grid auto rows, right? So grid auto rows, what it does is it will set a minimum, it will set a default height for all the rows that I'm going to create. So this grid auto rows that I've added as my CSS property, I've given it a value of 100 pixels, right? And I've saved this. Now, if I refresh this, I can see that all the boxes have a default height of 100 pixels right now, right? Now, uh, sometimes this is not enough. Let's say that I increase the, number of columns that are there. So I'm going to do a repeat and I'm going to repeat it 5 times. Right, I want 5 columns in each row, and or not five, I want to have 9 columns, right? And I want them to be of one fraction each. So basically, these 9 boxes that I have in a single row that is there, right? Now, let's say that I add some content into one of the boxes, right? Let's say that I go to the Virtual Tech School's website, I copy some content out of it, and I paste it here, right? And I refresh this, so I can see that now the content is not fitting into the box, right? And let's say that I change my 9 to about 8, right? So this time one box is coming down, right? So I have 8 boxes in my single row, 8 columns in my single row, and I can see that the box with more content, the first box that is there with more content than designated, the text is getting out of it because the default size of 100 pixels is not enough for it, and the text is not visible because box 9 is coming on top of it, right? So for these things, what you can do is you can have a property called min max, right? So min max is simply that you want to set a minimum value for your box. So I want to set a minimum value of 100 pixels. I want to say that okay, the rows that you're creating, they should be because I'm changing adding this property into my grid auto rows, right? So it is always going to apply into the rows itself, right? I'm saying that I want the minimum to be 100 pixels, which is this, right? But if let's say the content exceeds, if let's say the content is more than 100 pixel and it is not fitting into the box that is there, then set it, as much as it takes, right? So if let's say I refresh this now, I can see that all the boxes that are there in my first row, all the columns that are there, they have more height than the box in my second row, right? So this box 9 that is there, it is having a height, a default height of 100 pixels, but all the boxes in my first row, they are having some different height that is there, right? So that is how you can counter this problem with the simple min max function that is there in your CSS values. Now let's revert the changes back. Let me remove this text and add box 1 here. Right, if I refresh this, I can see that this is back to normal. Again, I mean, instead of having 8, I just want to have 3. Right, so this is a pretty basic layout in front of me right now. Now let's say that I want to have a different layout for these boxes, right? And let me draw the layout to show you how I want it to be displayed. So let's say that I have my boxes like this. I'll just write one here. So this is my first box. This is my second box. This is my third box, right? Then this is my fourth box, and this is my fifth box. This is my sixth. This is my seventh. This is my eighth. And this is my ninth, right? So let's say this is the structure that I have currently on my website, right? And I want to change the layout of these boxes, right? Because grids is all about layouts, right? And as you can see, it is used to create 2D layouts, right? So this is one direction, and this is your second direction, so 2D layouts, right? So let's say that I want this to be in the following structure. I want this to be my box 1, right? Then I want about this to be my box 2, right? Then I want this to be my box 3. Then I want this to be my box 4. Then I want this to be my box 5. And then I want this to be my box 6, right? And let's ignore the remaining three boxes. So this is the structure that I want to have for my boxes, right? Now there is a property in CSS known as grid column and simultaneously grid row as well, that takes a value, and these value is something like this. It's like 1 by 3, or 2 by 3, something like this, right? So this is the value. Now you will ask that what does this 1 by 3 and what does this 2 by 3 mean? And don't worry if you're not able to understand this, because when we are going to use this to create the layout that we drew below, right? When you're going to use this to create this layout, then it will start making a lot more sense. But just know that these type of values go into it. Grid column and grid row are two CSS properties for grids, and 1 by 3, 2 by 3, these are the values that it usually takes, right? So what does this 1 by 3 and 2 by 3 means? Now if you take a look at the grids that is created, this entire this entire line that is there, the starting line that is there for any grid, this is considered as 1, right? Similarly, now this entire line that is created for the grids, right? This line is called 2, this is called 3, right? And similarly, this is called a 4. Right, and this was for columns, right? So you can say that this is the first position for the columns, this is the second position for the columns, this is the third position for the columns, and this is the fourth position for the columns, right? Similarly, you can do for rows as well. You can say that this entire thing is your first position for the row, this entire thing is your second position for the row, where do I write it? Second position for the row. Then this entire thing is your third position for the row, and this entire thing is your fourth position for the row. Right. So when I say grid column and then 1 by 3, it means that for this particular grid column, if let's say I'm writing the CSS property for this one, I'm saying for this box, then I'm saying that for this particular grid column, I wanted to start at position 3, and I wanted to start at position 1, and I wanted to end at position 3, right? If I, let's say, apply this grid row to this 2, then I can say that I want this to start at this position for row, this position for row, and I wanted to end at this position at row, right? So this grid column and grid row, this helps in positioning your item inside your grid layout, right? So now just to see how it works so that it makes more sense, because currently it's a bit confusing. It's a bit confusing to teach as well, to be very honest. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a class, or not a class, I'm going to add an ID into all of these boxes, right? So I'm going to add an ID called box and then whatever the number is. So box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, box 5, box 6, 7, 8, and 9, right? So I have these IDs. So inside the boxes, I have added an ID called box 1, box 2 up until box 9, right? For all the boxes that I have, and I really don't need these three boxes, so I'm going to comment them for now, right? We also talked about what HTML comments are in one of the previous videos. So now if I look at my grid here, I can see that I have these six boxes, right? And my objective for the six boxes is to align them like this, right? So how I can approach this is I can pick my first box. I can say that I want the styles to be applied to box one, right? And I can use the CSS property grid column, right? Now here, this first edge of box one, this is my one, right? This is my 2, right? This is my 3, and this is my 4, right? So this is my 1 here, the first edge of box, then the edge between box 1 and box 2, this white space, this can be my 2, and then the space between box 2 and box 3, this can be my 3 in terms of columns, and then after box 3 I have my 4, right? So I want this to go from 1 to 3, right? Because in the layout I have given it about two spaces, the two column worth spaces, right? So I want this to go from 1 to 3, right? So what I can do is I can do a 1 by 3. Right, if I save this now and if I refresh this, now I can see that it is taking the space from 1, from position 1 to position 3. Right, now similarly I can apply the same styles for box 2 as well. I can use my hashtag box 2 to apply styles to the ID box 2 which I have given to my box 2 here. Right, so here what I can do is I can use my grid row and I can say that I want again in terms of rows, I want it to start on the first row itself, but I want it not to end at 2, but I want it to end at 3, right? So I can give it a 1 by 3 here, right? And if I save this, then I can see that it has taken the row space that I wanted it to take, but it hasn't taken the column position that I wanted it to take, right? So I can give it a column position as well. I can say grid column, and then I can say that I want this to start at my 3 by 4, right? So now if I refresh this, I can see that this is starting at 3. This box 2 is starting at 3. Here, if you pay attention, then the first edge was my 1 in terms of column. The second was my 2. The third was my 3. And then this one, last one was my fourth. Similar for rows, the first one was 1. Then this one was 2. Then this one was 3. And then this one was 4. Right. So I'm saying that for box 1 particularly, I'm saying that I wanted to start at 1, right? To start at 1 and end at 3, right? And for my box 2, I'm saying that for the column of this box, I wanted to start at 3, end at 4. And in terms of rows, I wanted to start at 1 and end at 3, right? So that's how I position my box 1 and box 2, right? Now, similarly, I can position my other boxes as well. I can see that my box 3 is here. Now, if I take a look at my CSS grids, right, I can see that my box 3 is positioned pretty perfectly here. I don't need to change this. Now the next thing that I want to do is I can see that my box 4 is elongated. It is again taking two spaces. So I can apply the styles to my box 4 directly. Right, and for box 4, since it is already occupying the column that I wanted it to, but it is not taking the row, I can say that I wanted to take the grid row, and it is going to not start at 1, it is going to start at 2, and it is not going to end at 3, it is going to end at 4, right? So I'm going to give it a 2 by 4 here. Now if I save this and if I refresh this, I can see that my box 4 is now elongated, but my box 3 has moved positions, right? So for my box 3 I can specify the positions. For my box 3 I can say that I want the grid column to be uh, column to be 1 by 2, right? And I want my grid, and I'll explain it again. I'll explain this entire thing again, right? And I want my grid row to be 2 by 3, right? So I specified the positions for my box 3, right? My box 4 is coming here again, right? And as usual, I have my box 5 and then box 6 here. So the layout that I wanted to achieve, box 1 and then box 2, then box 3, then box 4, then box 5, box 6, that has been achieved by simply doing this, right? So now let's again try to understand what really happened here, right? So the first thing that I did was I set my template. I set my template for columns, and I said that I want to have three columns each of one fraction, which means that I want to have, uh, I'll just draw it out so that it's easier to understand. So the first thing that I did was I specified my column template, and I said that I wanted to have three columns each, right? So I wanted to have three columns, right? This is what I specified here. Grid template columns repeated three times for one fraction each. So all the columns that are going to be there, I want to have three columns of one fraction each in my grid, right? So this is about one fraction, right? This is about one fraction, and this is about one fraction, right? So I have my three fractions here, three columns in my row, right? This is my column template for my grid, right? This is what I did. And now I can say that this first line that is there, in terms of my columns, if I'm talking about in this direction, then I can say that this is my first position, right? This is my second position in my grid, right? This is my third position in my grid, and this is my fourth position in my grid, right? So I have these positions now in terms of my columns, right? Now, the next thing that I'm doing is, let's say that we talk about the rows now, right? So these are my rows, right? These were my columns, and these are my rows, right? Now, for the rows, I'm saying that this position is going to be my 1, right? This position is going to be my 2, right? And then this position is going to be my 3, right? This position is going to be my 4. And if I have, let's say, more rows, if let's say I add back these uh, boxes again, then then I'll have more rows as well. I'm going to have one more row. So I can say that this row is my 5, right? So as many rows as I want, right? So this is how it currently is, right? Now I've specified the columns in my template. I've said that it is going to have three columns each and every time, because that is something that I specified here, that it is going to, the template columns is going to be three, right? So I want to have three columns of equal width, one fraction each, right? So in terms of rows, it is going to have about five positions or more depending. But in terms of columns, it is always going to have just four positions because there are three columns. So this first position, this second position, this third position, and this fourth position. Right. Now, when I'm positioning my first box, if I go back to my code, now when I'm positioning my first box, first positioning in the terms of columns, right? So grid column means that I want to position it in terms of columns, and I'm saying that the value for it should be 1 by 3, right? So this doesn't means 1 by 3, it means that I want this first column to be all the way from 1 to 3, right? So this would be my first column that is there. Right. Now moving on to my second box, right? I'm saying that the grid column is going to be 3 by 4. Right. So again, I'm positioning the column here. Now 3 by 4 means that I want this column to take the position from 3 to 4 in terms of column. Right. Now this 3 to 4 could be in this row, this could be in this row, it could be in this row, it could be in whatever row. Right. But I'm just talking about the position of the column here. Right, so I'm saying that I want this to take the position of 3 to 4, right? But since I want this to take the position in terms of row as well, I'm defining the grid row as well here and saying I want it to take the position of 1, 2, 3, right? So in terms of row, it is taking this position from 1 all the way to 3. Right, makes sense. Now moving forward, I have my box 3. Right, box 3, I'm saying that for columns, I wanted to take the position from 1 to 2. Right, so again, I mean it is going to take the position from 1 to 2. Right, just this much space it is going to take in the layout, right? But for rows, I'm saying that I wanted to take the position from 2 to 3, right? So in terms of rows, this is my 2 in terms of rows, and this is my 3 in terms of rows. So it is just going to take this much space. So this becomes a box, right? And this is the space it is taking for my box 3, right? So this entire thing was my box 1. Right. Now, this entire thing from this to this entire thing became my box 2. Right. Now, this space from this to this and from this became my box 3. Right. And moving forward, I have my box 4's position. So I'm saying for box 4, I want the row position of it to be from 2 to 4. Right. So I'm saying the row position starts from 2. Right. Row positions means moving downwards. Right. So I want the row position to start from 2, which is this, and I want it to go all the way to 4. Right. Which is this. So this, and by default it is taking a space of one fraction, right? Because that's what I specified in my template, my column template, right? So it is by default taking a position of one fraction, right? So this entire thing becomes my box 4, right? And automatically, since this space is gone and this space is gone and this space is gone, my box 5 is going to come here, right? So my box 5 is going to come here, and my box 6 is going to come here. Now all the boxes that I have after that, this box 7, they are going to automatically just take one fraction each. Since I have not specified the position layout for them, then they are going to act as normal, and they are going to take the position like this. Right. Now I could have tweaked it a little bit. I can say that for box 4 particularly, I want it from here up until here. Right. So let's say that I make some changes. I want this not to end at 3. I want it to end at 4. So I don't want this to end here. I want this to end here, my box 2. Right. So box 2 currently ends here, but I want it to end here. Right. And for box 4, I want it to end at the position of box 8, right? So for box 4, instead of from 2 to 4, I'm saying that it should go from 2 to 5, right? If I save this now and if I refresh this, I can say that the length of my box 2 has increased, the length of my box 4 has increased, and the two boxes that didn't find space moved downwards, right? Same goes for box 9 as well. I can simply add another ID here and add some CSS to it. So box 9, I can say that the column position for it, so grid column, right? I want this to be elongated, right? I want my box 9 to be elongated to take the entire space below the box 7 as well. So I can say that it doesn't start from 1, it starts from 2, right? So it starts at 2 and goes all the ways not to 3 but to 4, right? So it goes till 4, right? If I save this now and refresh this, I can say that my box 9 has taken all the width that is there, right? So that was all about the CSS grids, and I know it is very confusing for beginners, and this is something that comes with practice. It is going to come with time, so do make sure to do a lot of practice for this, and we are going to have some assignments for you so that you can practice all of this stuff and improve your CSS grids, because this is a very powerful tool and this is something that is going to help you create websites in a flash, right? So stay tuned till the assignments. But moving forward, let's talk about the box model in CSS. Talking about CSS box model, the term box model is used when talking about the design and layout, right? So just like CSS grids, it is used to talk about design and layout, and everything in CSS is a box, square or rectangle, right? And the CSS box model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element, and it consists of margins, it consists of borders, it consists of padding, and it obviously consists of content as well, right? So it looks something like this, right? What you're seeing in front of your screen. So you have this margin first, right? The outermost layer, and then inside the margin you have border, right? Border could be 1 pixel, it could be 10 pixel, it could be 20, whatever it is. Then you have padding, and inside the padding you have content, right? So just to take and look at an example, right? I'm going to inspect this website, and let's say that I inspect an element like this, right? So here inside the element, if let's say I scroll all the way down, I can see that it gives me this diagram here, right? So in the diagram I can see that this thing does not have any margin per se, right? The margin at the top and the bottom is dash, which is nil, and on the left and the right it is minus 12, right, in pixels, right? So that is the margin, negligible or no margin in this, right? Then we have the border, right? So as I hover into the border, you can see that the screen is getting the border is getting highlighted, the box is getting highlighted. If let's say I increase the border for this, let me just increase the border a bit. So instead of 0.1 px, I am going to change this to 10 pixels, right? So now I mean it would be better visible. If I scroll all the way down, you can see that after the margin we have this border, so it is highlighted by orange, right? Or yellowish color, something like that. And this highlight part that you see, this is the border. Then we have the padding highlighted by green, right? So just take a look at the YouTube stat box that is there. No margin, we have some border, then we have some padding, right? And inside that we have the content highlighted by blue, right? So that is how it usually looks like, and everything, uh, all of these four elements, the margin, border, padding, and content, all of this makes one box, right? um, which is a part of a CSS box model, right? And again, I mean, for content, the content of the box, content is basically the content of the box where the text and the images appear, you could say. Padding clears an area around the content and it is transparent in nature, right? Border goes around the padding and content. So first comes the content, then the padding, then the border, right? It goes around the padding and content. And margin clears an area outside the border, right? So outside the border it clears an area, and again it is transparent, right? Now you must have heard this quite a lot, that in any website that is out there, right? Any website, you can pick any website that you would like. So any website that is out there, it is all just boxes, right? It consists of a lot of boxes, right? So if you take a look at this website, this home page here, the website, Virtual Tech School's website here, ignore the nav bar for now, right? You would see that this content here, this title here, this is one box, right? Then below this there is a box called paragraph, and then next to it there's a box with the image, right? Similarly, we have this join us today, You can also say that this is a rectangular box, right? It obviously, I mean, all of this contains some styling in it, right? There's a lot of styles involved and content involved, but at the end of the day, it's just boxes, right? So if I had to represent this page, this entire page, in terms of boxes, it would look something like this, right? So at the top of it, I have my nav bar, right? Then I have a big box divided into two, right? On the left side, on top, I have another rectangular box with the title, right? Then I have below that I have another box with the paragraph, right? And then next to it, I have a big box for images, right? Then I have another rectangular box for the join us title that is there, right? This join us today, right? So first we had the title, obviously, I mean, after the nav bar we had the title at the paragraph and the images, right? So title, paragraph and images, right? So a big box divided in two, and then on the left side I again divided in two for the title and the paragraph and then the images, right? Then I have my join us today, right? Then I have these four boxes, right? These four boxes, and this four boxes again, I mean, they first have the image, then the title, then the stat, and then a button, right? So if even if you look at the boxes here, I have one for the image, then the title, then the stats, and then finally the button, right? Then moving forward, I have this section. Uh, Let me just draw it as well, right? So this is my first section. Right. Then this thing is my second section. Right, for the stats and all. Then this is my third section. Right, and the third section again consists of a title, then a paragraph, then a button, and then an image. Right. So here I depicted the same title, paragraph, then button, and then the image finally. Right. Then I have the FAQs box, the title box for FAQs. Then there's this accordion, right? Don't worry what this is. We'll talk about this drop down and all later, right? But then we have this for the FAQs, right? So the FAQ drop downs that is there, right? Then we have button. Button is our join Discord button that is there in the website, right? So this can be our another section, right? And finally we have our footer. So for footer again you can see that I have logo on my left, and then three words written: project, mentorship, web development, and then I have a button on the left, social icons on the right, and then copyright stuff at the bottom, right? So similar to this structure: logo, then projects, mentorship, web development, then button, and then social icons, and then the copyright stuff, right? So this is my footer, right? But as you can see, I mean, instead of you know looking at this website, obviously it contains a lot of content and a lot of styles as well, right? But you can see that I was easily able to represent this website in the form of this, you know boxes, right? The nav bar, title, paragraph, images, and all that stuff, right? So I was easily able to represent this in the form of boxes, right? So any website that is there that you look at, right? It may be the platform that you're watching it on, youtube.com, right? Or the platform that you usually use to share about your learnings and stuff, Twitter, the professional platform that you might be using, things like LinkedIn, right? All these platforms, they are nothing but boxes, right? All the platforms, all the websites that are there, they just consist of boxes, and these boxes have lot of styles and content in it, but at the end of the day, they are simply just boxes. Right. So this is simply called the CSS box model. And what I've done here, this drawing that I've created, right? consisting of all the boxes for navbar, title, paragraph, images, joiners, and then the stat box, and this third section, this FAQ section, this footer. This I usually call it a wireframe. This is known as a wireframe, right? And now the exercise that I was talking about, right? So in the beginning of this video, I said that in this video, I'm going to discuss a simple exercise, right? That everyone should follow, that I usually follow before, even attempting to code any website in order to plan better, in order to create my code base better, is simply to create a wireframe of the website, right? Is simply to create a box model for the website, right? Now, whenever any person gives me, if let's say I'm doing some freelancing work, or if let's say I'm working for a company and they come up with a design, they say that okay, this is something that needs to be built, right? This is something that needs to be built. I just completely ignore all the styles that are there. I just completely ignore the content as well. What I try to look at is the boxes, like what sort of boxes are there in this website, what is the layout of those boxes, right? So in this video, we talked about CSS grids that are used for layouts, and we are now talking about box models. So what I usually do is I just usually, whenever I look at a design of any website or anything, I just try to, visualize all the boxes that are there. I try to visualize the layout of those boxes, how they are stacked on top of each other, and how they, form the entire website. If I just remove just forget about all the styles that are used, if I just forget about the content, what is the skeleton of the website, what is the structure of the, what is the layout of the website, right? So it is a very basic exercise that any website that you're trying to create, the first thing that you should do is take a pen, take a paper or a pencil, whatever it is, pencil and a paper. Just try to create this wireframe of that website, right? Just try to create this wireframe, just try to break it down into as many boxes as you can, right? How many boxes are actually used in this website, and what is the layout of those boxes, right? So once you do that, you'll get a better idea of, the things that are repeating. You would know that okay, this title here and this title here, and this paragraph here and this paragraph here, this is something that is repeating again and again in the page. It might be repeating in other pages as well, right? So I just usually take all the pages, try to create a wireframe, a box model for it on a simple paper, right? Using pen and paper or pencil and paper, I just created, and I just try to see what are the common elements in it, right? Maybe the title or the paragraph styles are common, maybe the images. So if you take a look at the website here, then this image here, this is a simple image, right? I've just added a YouTube logo on top of it, but at the end of the day, this is just an image, right? If I click on it, it redirects me to youtube.com, right? And similarly, this is an image, but if you look at it, both the styles are pretty same, right? Nothing is changing in terms of how it's looking, right? If you look at the buttons, this join button here, the bootcamp button here, the join discord button here, again the bootcamp button here, all these buttons looks pretty same, right? So if you, let's say, draw this wireframe of whatever website that you're trying to create, once you create this wireframe on your paper, right, then you can easily, distinguish that okay, these are the styles that are reappearing, these are the elements that are coming up again and again in the website. And if let's say you're using plain HTML CSS to code something like this, then you can, better plan your classes. You can, because I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to repeat your code, right? You don't want to be in a situation where your client comes up with a different design and then you are changing the same code snippet on multiple places, right? You want to have the same source of truth. You want to follow the don't repeat yourself, the dry principle in coding, right? And you, for that, you want to use classes, right? So if let's say my titles are similar, my, stats are similar, then instead of writing four different styles for it, I'm going to use a class for it. I want to use a class for it simply because I don't want to make the changes, again and again, when the client is requesting it, right? Because if you're, let's say, get into freelancing or even in a job, your product managers or your client is going to, come up to you again and again and going to ask you to do those silly changes that for you would be very frustrating. So it's better to design it better, right? And even in large organizations that use things like React JS and stuff, they have components for each and everything that is there, right? The button, the simplest smallest button that you see on your page, they have a separate component for it, right? Because that button is used in multiple places, and they don't want to change those buttons again and again. They just have a single source of truth, a single component for button that they are using again and again in different pages, so that if, let's say, any changes happen to the button in the future, they can just change it once and it gets reflected everywhere, right? So doesn't matter if you're using React.js, doesn't matter if you're using any other front-end framework, doesn't matter if you're using vanilla HTML, CSS. This is going to help you plan better because you're looking at an overview of the website, you're looking at the common elements that are there, and this way you can basically take out all the common classes that you want, that okay, this element is getting repeated twice, maybe once in this page, in some other page, or something like that. So you're just trying to plan it in your, rather than doing it on the go while coding and planning it in your head. Just plan it on the paper, create a wireframe of the website, create the box model of the website, and once the box model is ready, try to look for common elements that are there. Try to see that okay, this paragraph style and this paragraph style is similar, so I can give a class here. This image and this image is similar, so I can give a class here. This button and this button is similar, so I can give a class here. Right? Try to look for those common elements. This title and paragraph are similar, so I can create them as a separate component in React.js. This button is repeating in different places, so I can create a component for this button, right? Try to look for those common elements after drawing this wireframe, right? Rather than doing it in your mind or doing it on the go while coding, because this is a very rookie mistake that a lot of people just start coding without planning, right? So I mean, since this course is uh, created to ensure that you acquire the real world skills right from day one, I want you to, any website that you're cloning, any project that you're making, I want you to create a wireframe for it first. I want you to visualize it. I want you to look at it, and I want you to find the common elements that are there, so that you can plan it better while you are coding. Before even writing the code, that okay, these are the classes that I'm going to create, and I'm going to create these classes because they are having similar styles that are there, right? So this is something, a basic exercise that I usually follow, and I would like you to follow as well, because it is going to ease up your work a lot going forward. It is going to help you in writing professional code that is there. Because a lot of people, I mean, if you are, let's say, applying for a front end developer job, and you uh, don't create components for even the smallest things, and those things are repeating at multiple places, these are the things that your interviewer is going to look at, and these are the things based on which they are going to reject you and your application, right? So make sure that you're writing professional code, make sure that you're planning your code base better before even starting to write the code, and write your code better, right? So I mean, this is the basic wireframe, and I could have created a wireframe for other pages as well. I could have created a wireframe for about us page. It's pretty similar stuff. I could have created a wireframe for the bootcamp page, right? With all of these elements, and I could have created a wireframe for the courses page. If I go into explore, I could have created a wireframe for this page as well, right? But I just created it for homepage just to give you a gist of how you should actually take up things. So this is one simple exercise that is going to help you regardless of if you're using vanilla HTML, CSS, or React JS, or whatever it is, right? And now, since we are talking about this box model, right, we take a look at this and we're seeing that everything is a box, you know, and it's just a layout of those boxes that we need to design, right? So, since we have already learned about CSS grids, let's do one thing. Let's try to design these boxes for two sections, right? The first section with the title, paragraph, and image, right? Or this section, you can say, ignore the nav bar for now. This first section with the title, the paragraph, and the image, right? The first section, and then let's try to create a CSS grid for the second section as well, which is this join us today. So one title and then four boxes below it, right? So let's try to create grids for it. Right now, since we have already talked about grids, if you would like, you can pause this video and attempt this on your own. Right, the boxes are here in front of you for section 1 and section 2. This is our section 1 with title, paragraph, and image. This is our section 2 with join us and the four stat boxes that are there. Right, try to create a layout for them, right? And a CSS grid for them. Pause this video and let's attempt that, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove everything out of this, right? I don't need anything. Again, I'm going to create a boilerplate HTML, right? I'm going to remove the meta tags because they're just jargon. We don't need them for now. uh, I'm going to give this a title of box model in CSS, right? And again, I'm going to create a style tag here, right? And yeah, so basically we are creating two sections, right? So the first section is our div with the, we can give an ID of grid 1 because this is going to be our first section, and then I'm going to create another div. Again, I can give this an ID of grid 2, right? So let's just work on grid 1 for now, right? It's going to have three things in it, right? So the first thing is, again, I mean, I'm going to give it a class of box because I want it to look like a box, right? And this is our title, right? Similarly, we have our paragraph and our image, right? So this is going to be our paragraph and this is going to be our image, right? So that is for grid 1. Now I'm going to give some styles to the box class that is there, and again I'm going to give a similar styles to as the previous one. So I'm going to give it a background color of gray and going to give you a border of 1 pixel solid black, right? And I'm going to give it a padding of 10 pixel so that it doesn't looks very crunched up. And if I refresh this now, I can see that I have my boxes in line, right? Similarly, I'm going to create here as well. So I'm going to create a div called box, and I'm going to say join us here. And again, I'm going to have four boxes below this. Now the first box is going to be for YouTube. The second box is going to be for Discord. The third box is going to be for hash node or whatever it was, and the fourth is going to be for Twitter, right? So now if I refresh this, I can see that I have my boxes, right? I can display them as grid, so I can do grid 1 and then display grid, right? And I can give this some margin at the bottom. I can give it a margin of 50 pixels so that my two things, my two different grids are having some space between them, right? And similarly, I can display grid 2 as grid as well, right? So display and then grid, right? So I have my grids ready. Now I want the title and the paragraph to be like this and image here, right? So what I can do is, the first thing is I need to tell it that I want I want two columns that is there, right? So for two columns, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my grid template columns to 1 FR and 1 FR, or I could have repeated it as well, repeat, and then I want to repeat it two times. I want to have them equal width, right? So if I refresh this now, then I can see that my title, paragraph, and images are coming nicely, right? Now here I can give it an ID called title, right? I can give it an ID called paragraph, and I can give it an ID called image, right? And I want my title is in the position that I want it to be, but my image I want to be here, and I wanted to, have some the length of 2 rows that is there, right? So I'm going to add some styles into my title, right? For title, the main style that I'm going to add is going to be grid row, right? So grid row. Now I want this row to start at 1. Right, I wanted to start at 1. I wanted to go all the way not to 2 but to 3. Right, so from 1 to 3 I want this to be right. And now I can see not the title, I should have done it for image here. So now I can see that my image is taking 2, you know, rows worth of length that is there. Right, so that's my image, title, and paragraph. Now I want my image to be here. Right, so again, I mean, for my image, I can say that I want my grid column to start at not 1 but 2. I want it to start at 2 and end at 3. 2, 3. Right. So 1, 2, 3. I want it to start at 2, end at 3. I want the rows to go from 1 not to 2 but to 3. Right. So now if I refresh this, I can see that I have my title and paragraph here and image here. Right. I can again, I mean, give some minimum default, height to this thing that I have. So the boxes that I have, so I can say grid auto rows, and I can give them a minimum height of 250 pixels each, right? So this is something that we have created, right? The title, paragraph, and images, right? Now if I look at my xkelly draw here, it looks pretty similar to this, right? The section 1, right? The first section, title, paragraph, and image, right? If I look at my website here, it looks pretty similar, title, paragraph, images, right? So just with the help of css grids, I'm able to create this title, paragraph, and image layout that I want for my website, right? So that was there for my section 1. Now again, up until this time, if you haven't paused the video yet, then I would like you to pause the video and attempt this join us section 2 part on your own, right? And if not, then obviously you can continue watching the video. So for grid 2, I mean, the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to again set the template. So the template I'm going to set on a repeat. This time I want 4 columns, right? Because YouTube stats is going to have 4 boxes. So I want to have 4 columns here of one fraction each, equal width, right? If I refresh this, then I can see that I have my second section here with joiners, YouTube, Discord, Hashnode, and Twitter, right? Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want my joiners to have the entire width of it, right? So here I'm going to give an ID called joiners, right? And I'm going to say that when you talk about joiners, right, I want to have it the column positions starting from 1 all the way not to 2, not to 3, not to 4, but to 5, right? So I wanted to end at 5, 1 by 5, 1 to 5, right? If I refresh this now, I can see that my joiners is taking the full width, and then I have my YouTube, Discord, Hashnode, and Twitter, right? So again, I mean, I can give this grid some minimum height. So I can say that I want the grid auto rows to be again 250 pixel in height, right? If I refresh this now, I can see that it looks pretty much as I wanted it to. And if let's say for joiners, I think that the height is a bit much and I want it to be a less. a bit less, then I can give it a maximum height. I can say that for this I want a maximum height of 100 pixels, right? So this time my joiners, shrinks a little bit, and I have my YouTube, Discord, Hashnode, and Twitter, right? So obviously we can style it as much as we want, however we want, right? But the basic layout is going to remain the same, right? I have my, for the section one, I have my title, paragraph, and image, right? And for the second section, I have my joiners title, and then stat box for YouTube, Discord, Hashnode, and Twitter, right? Now inside these boxes again, I could have, created another grid, right? So I could have given it an ID called grid 3, right? And inside grid 3, I could have again created divs, right? With the class of small box. So let me just copy and paste this, right? And here I could have given the logo. Here I could have given the name. Here I could have given the stat, and here I could have given the button, right? And if I refresh this now, I can see that it is currently appearing pretty normal. But here if I display it as grid, so grid 3 display grid, right? And then I want the grid template columns to be just one fraction, so one item per row, right? Nothing more than that. And I can see that it has, stretched all the way, acquiring the space of the box, right? So again, as the website, I have my logo, then the name, then the stat, then the button. So here I can have the logo, the name, the stat, and the button, right? And I could give some, just to differentiate a little bit, I can give it a style as well. So I called the class small box, right? So for small box, I can give it a background color of black. I can give it a color of white, right? And I can give it a padding of 10 pixel each, right? If I refresh this now, I can give some gap here as well. So I can say that I want the gap to be about 10 pixels each, right? Now I can see that I have my smaller grid as well here, right? So I have my main grid, the title, paragraph, images, then I have my second grid. I'll just remove this maximum height from here because it's looking a bit weird. Yeah, so I have my first section here with title, paragraph, and images. Now I have my second section here with join us, and then four stat box for YouTube, Discord, Hashnode, and Twitter, right? And inside the stat box for, let's say, YouTube, I have my logo, name, stat, and button, right? And this is something that I created purely with CSS grids, right? And you can see that this layout that I have created is pretty similar to this layout, just without the content and without the styles, right? So now you would notice that just because I had this wireframe in front of me, it was so easy for me to create this layout in the first place. And now since the layout is ready, all I need to do is add the content in it. All I need to do is add the styles in it, and it is ready to go, right? So this is pretty much it. If you look at the responsiveness of this, then you would notice that whatever you created is responsive in the sense that it is displaying it in the same ratio on different screen sizes. If I, let's say, select iPhone 12 Pro, then it is displaying it like this, zooming it to 200%. It is displaying it like this on iPhone, right? And if I, let's say, go on iPad, then even I mean it's just changing the ratios, but it's displaying it in a very similar manner. And for browser again, it is displaying it as it should, right? So don't worry about the responsiveness. Yes, sometimes we want to, have different layouts for different screen sizes. So that is something that we are going to be talking in the next video, when we are going to be talking about Bootstrap, when we are going to introduce Bootstrap and look at grids in Bootstrap. So that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you learned about CSS grids and also about box model. And I do hope that you practice this simple exercise before cloning or creating any website, of creating a wireframe of it, so that you can plan it better, you can create its layout better, and you just do your stuff a bit faster than usual. Right now, this video is also going to have some assignments for you. So if you'll notice here that I have created, some code for two sections of the website, right? But the website doesn't end here, right? So in the comment section below, there would be a pinned tweet pointing towards the notes for this uh, class, and the notes is something that you need to contribute. So make sure that you contribute the notes, and it is also going to contain the link of the assignment that is there. So this video has this assignment with two tasks, right? The first task is to create a wireframe of the entire website, right? To create the wireframe of the entire website, including all the pages following the box model as showcased in the course video, right? So I showed you how to create the wireframe. This is the wireframe for the home page. Now the website doesn't end here. It has this about us page as well. It has this bootcamp page as well. And similarly, it has the courses page as well, right? And inside the courses, it has this explore page as well, which takes you to the exploration of the courses and things like that. So all of that is there. So that's your first task, to create the wireframe on simple pen and paper. Create a wireframe of all the pages that is there in the website, right? Create the boxes and that layout for the website as minute boxes as you can, right? Break them down as much as you can. If you look at this particular page, then this is one box divided in two, with image on the left, and then on the right side it is divided in three, right? With title and then paragraph and then button, right? So pretty similar stuff. You create this wireframe, and then the second task is to try to create grids based on your wireframe using boxes, right? So I already created grids for two sections. This was section 1, title, paragraph and image, and this was section 2, join us, and then the four stat boxes with logo, name, stat and button that is there, right? So try to create the grids based on your wireframe using boxes, right? Just try to replicate the layout in the form of boxes, and no styling is needed for this task. So don't worry about the styles, don't worry about the content that is there inside the boxes. Just worry about the boxes and the layout of them, and try to replicate that layout that you create in your wireframe, right? So again, I mean, at the beginning of my channel as well as the course, I mentioned that there are going to be assignments. I mentioned how important it is going to be for you to follow those assignments. So if you are serious about learning, I hope that you are going to, attempt these assignments, and try to create a wireframe of the website for this video at least, and try to create grids based on your wireframe using boxes, right? Now, whatever you create, the grids for your boxes, whenever you create it, we have a channel on our Discord server called assignments. If you're not a part of our Discord server yet, then don't worry. The link to that would be in the description below. You can join our Discord server, and in the assignments, you can post your assignments, whatever assignments you're completing. Not in this video, but in videos coming in future as well. The assignments that you complete, you can post your assignments here, and you can tag at the rate helper here, right? So simply tag at the rate helper with your assignments, and these helpers are going to help you in reviewing your work. They are going to help you in completing your assignments, and they'll be, just telling you how you can improve and stuff like that, right? So for reviews, just post your assignments here. I'm very eager to look at the assignments that you complete, and I have mentioned it here as well, how to get it reviewed. So It's pretty clear, the instructions. And yeah, so that's pretty much it in this video, and I hope you learned something. CSS grids is something that comes with practice, so this is the practice that I can offer you. Create the wireframe of our virtual tech schools website, and then try to create the CSS grid layout for it with the help of boxes, right? Uh, Doing this, it would ensure that you have a good grasp on how grids work and how the layout works and things like that. And you can also try this exercise on some other websites as well. Try to create a wireframe for YouTube's homepage, try to create the boxes for YouTube's homepage, right? And whatever you're doing, make sure to share that with us on our Discord channel. Now, if you learned something in this video, then do make sure to tweet about it and write a thread about it, or write a blog about it. Right, whatever you're tweeting, don't forget to use hashtag learning with Apoorv, right? Because this is the hashtag that I usually look at on Twitter whenever I'm looking for people who are going through my course and stuff like that. So use this hashtag, share your learning with others, right? uh, Create content around it, create content around whatever you're learning. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. And in the next video, we'll be talking about Bootstrap. We'll be talking about how websites are actually responsive, and we'll start coding our virtual tech schools website, which is going to be pretty exciting. So do make sure to stay tuned for that. And I'll with that being said, I think I'll see you in the next video. Till then, peace.